Would limiting the age of the president to 65 be something you'd support? Why or why not? I think the US should implement a ranked choice voting system. I think that will have a much bigger impact on our political system. This concept is carrying more and more weight with me lately. My beef with presidential elections is that by the time I get any say, Pennsylvania, all I get to do is pick which is the lesser of two evils, a binary decision laid in front of me. I really want to see the panic on politicians' faces after the first major election with ranked choice. The Republicans and the Democrats would almost certainly still win, but I feel like finding out that both parties are more people's second pick than first would terrify them. See, I bet they already know this, and that's why they will block any initiative to switch to a ranked voting system. But I'm a big pessimist. The people who are voted in through the voting system should not have any power over how that voting system works. Seems like a separation of powers issue. I guess that makes sense, but then who TF else is there to make the change? Duck, what'd it give to have some people with actual fucking integrity in places of power? Isn't the issue that people who deserve power don't usually seek it? Yeah. Even arguments about mental fitness aside, I think we should limit to candidates who would at least be reasonably expected to spend a couple decades in whatever world they create. Edit, by the teats of Thor, this was apparently the most upvoted comment on June 9th of 2022. Reddit sent me a little badge over it. I like your reasoning. Why stop at the presidency? How about for all elected officials? More importantly, the unelected officials. I loved RBG, but 80s and 90s is too ducking old to be on the Supreme Court. 80s and 90s is too ducking old to be on the Supreme Court. In Ireland, Supreme Court judges have to retire at the age of 70. In us, at least our state, doctors over age 70 have to do competency tests. The president sets the precedent. 65 is when it's time for people to retire. Sit down, make room, live out your days in peace. Set that tone for the American people. Agreed. If the average American is expected to retire around 65, why not the president? It isn't that people are expected to retire around 65, rather, it's that people are expected not to retire until around 65, 67 now, if we're talking about Social Security. Federal law enforcement is mandated at 57. How about we set that as the precedent for everyone else? Edit, Justice Department memo for those curious. Devil's advocate, if they're law enforcement, wouldn't that be a much more physically demanding job than a justice, president, or someone up on the hill? Edit, man, so many people are redlord. And pension so they can retire earlier without money worry. Yes, absolutely. Both Joe Biden and Donald Trump are way too old to be president. So was Reagan when he ran 40 plus years ago. Hell, I'd even go further and cap the ages for all elected officials at 65. At 69 years 348 days old, Reagan was the oldest president ever elected when he won. Trump broke that by almost a year when he was elected at 70 years 220 days old. Then Biden obliterated that when he was elected at 78 years 61 days old. We're trending in the wrong direction with this. Biden was older entering office than Reagan when he left office, the oldest president when leaving office. Bro turns 80 this year, that sounds fuck Lamau. Especially for the USA out of all countries. He should be chillin', not running a 300 meters plus population country LMW. All politicians should duck off the second they hit retirement age. Those who would hit it during their term shouldn't be allowed to run for office. Yes, I would. And if you need to know why, just look at Joe Biden, Donald Trump, and Dianne Feinstein to name a few. This country has way too many geriatrics running it. I would think old Chucky Grassley would set a precedent for both age and term limits, but that's none of my business. Dairy Queen, good for you know what. If you lost your pet pigeon, it's dead in my Iowa farm, sorry for bad news. Anyway, you cut it, a shitty system will produce shitty politicians. Ranked choice voting, in my opinion, is the law that would best reform our political entire system. Congress can set its own salary, its own hours, and their length of term. No wonder their performance is terrible. They work practically half the year when they should really work like the rest of us. They should get 2 terms max. Being in charge of your own salary should be obviously a bad idea. And how about a max age for Congress, since they clearly can't take the hint? They should not be able to purchase stock. And these campaign text messages and direct mailers should be made illegal. If I could be king for a day. Definitely agree. The fact that there are career politicians shows there's something wrong with the system. I think any political position needs term limits. And to further things, if a senator or congressman decides they want to run for president, they should be forced to vacate their current position whether they win or lose. I don't see how we could determine that 65 is the magic number for such a cutoff. People age at different rates. There are folks with dementia in their 40s and some 90 years olds are still sharp as a needle. The better question to discuss is how to fix the way the executive is chosen. Is there a way to do this that would tend to yield better executives and stop putting partisan hacks in office? Thank you. I get the concerns about too long careers, health issues and not keeping up with the times, but making a sweeping cutoff just sounds like an old people suck and need to just retire and get out of the way attitude, which I don't like. It needs to be a case-by-case thing. Feels like something voters should be able to decide for themselves. Nah. I just want term limits across the board. I don't like old people making decisions that play out over decades, but I also don't like saying somebody can't do something strictly because they're old. They might be the best person. But we never get the best person for president. The two-party system is broke. So age limit on presidency doesn't really matter. They'll find some other garbage person to put up there that'll keep the status quo going. But screw this 30+ years in Congress nonsense. Term limits shift power away from elected officials and gives it to the lobbyists, who, having no term limits, will have the experience, connections, and tenure to control and manipulate all the fresh young congresspeople coming through the revolving door. They may be part of the solution. Obviously, the ridiculous amount of money in politics is another that needs to be addressed. I think the better solutions isn't barring people from running by law, and instead reform our electoral system to make it easier for our elections to reflect the will of voters. Ranked choice voting, elimination of the Electoral College, campaign finance reforms, an overhaul of how our presidential primaries work, etc. The less we have to think about strategic voting, the more we can vote for the candidate we actually prefer. And if that's a 70-year-old, then that's great. I would support it. Not only for the obvious issue of old people have mental health decline and the debate of mental disorders like dementia, but a generational thing too. People who are 65 and up live totally different lives than me at 26, even if we live generally in the same or similar location, financial status, and social groups. Some of these politicians say they worked at McDonald's when in college too and bought a house and paid for their education at just $2 an hour. In 1960, $2 had the same buying power as $18. That's more than my previous factory job, which was just $16 an hour. How do you explain that to them? Even Bernie wants a $15 min wage, which is not even a living wage anymore. Even Bernie wants a $15 min wage, which is not even a living wage anymore. I think that's him trying to raise it to a number that has a chance. From what I know of Bernie, he'd want it even higher if he thought it could happen. Gotta ease the people into things. I'm going to be the unpopular opinion here. I think having an age limit really does take away experienced candidates who have dedicated their lives to public service. While the majority of those people don't actually run for office, I think we do underplay how important experience and wisdom is important for a leader. Nelson Mandela was 75 when he was elected president. I have had professors in college who were so intelligent, compassionate, and overall good people who were over the age of 65. I know that the majority of people who run for president or who are in politics don't fit that narrative, but I think it's still important to keep that door open. Appreciate your voice of reason here. 65 is not that old. I don't care about age, only cognitive ability. There are plenty of 65 plus who are mentally sharp and carry a wealth of experience. I would maybe support cognitive exams for all candidates, but the process could easily be corrupted. Ultimately, I think voters should be able to vote for whoever they choose, and make their own determination about mental fitness. And candidates ought to do the right thing and step down if their mental abilities have been compromised. Yeah, this seems like it would be a very bizarre law to pass. If you don't like someone who's over 65, don't vote for them. Dems could have voted for Kamala, Buttigieg, Klobuchar, Booker, Yang, But they didn't. They voted for Biden. This means either Reddit youngsters do not reflect the American people and/or that we have some hypocrites in the thread. This means either Reddit youngsters do not reflect the American people and/or that we have some hypocrites in the thread. Hand over both buttons, sweatin'. Yeah, I mean this whole thread is telling. It's everyone screaming how old people suck at everything and are horrible at running stuff. These laws will never happen because while the youth are screaming at the older people, it's the older people who actually show up to vote.